Greed and Aparigraha. At its core, greed is an excessive and even pathological attachment. Greed pertains to an attachment to what a person fears losing, while avarice relates to an attachment to what one dreams of acquiring. This represents a fundamental error in life strategy, leading to suffering and emptiness, because the decision-making algorithm born from the survival instinct, which should be geared towards overall well-being, degrades into a focus solely on accumulation. Ideally, the decision-making process should be flexible and consider multiple factors such as a person's real needs, the ethics accepted in a particular society, long-term consequences, and impacts on others. However, for someone afflicted by greed, one factor takes precedence: accumulation, completely ignoring balance. The side effects, such as stress, loss of relationships, and ethical issues, are either ignored or assessed as trivial. Under normal circumstances, the psyche receives feedback from satisfaction and dissatisfaction, from success and failure. This helps individuals adjust their behavior and goals. But a greedy person, instead of feeling satisfied with having enough, only experiences temporary relief, quickly replaced by a new, even stronger desire. Greed distorts one's perception of reality, creating the illusion that happiness and security depend entirely on the amount accumulated. A seemingly minor optimization error can become the very meaning of life. At the instinctual level, accumulation is necessary for survival. In conditions of food and resource scarcity, conserving energy allows one to last longer, until the next opportunity to obtain food or avoid danger. Yet we live in a world where overeating may cause people to suffer more often than hunger does, and more nuanced needs come to the forefront, making it simply unprofitable to be greedy. In a climate of total competition, a greedy leader is doomed to constant employee turnover. A restaurant aiming for maximum profit by using cheap ingredients and cutting portion sizes will quickly receive a flood of negative reviews and see a sharp decline in patronage. Sellers who inflate prices lose customers, and so on. The loss of reputation has a much stronger negative impact than any dubious savings. In a world where any choice is preceded by an online search, reputation is one of the most valuable assets, and displaying greed is one of the fastest ways to lose it. On the other hand, demonstrating generosity makes a person a desirable partner in all areas of relationships, in marriage, friendship, and work. The most successful companies are known for high salaries, making them the dream workplaces for nearly all professionals. Friends who are willing to share, not just material resources, but also time and knowledge, are appreciated not only for selfish reasons, as receiving gifts, help, or simply witnessing an act of generosity activates the dopamine reward system in our brains. This elicits pleasant feelings: joy, gratitude, relief. Interacting with a greedy person requires constant vigilance, analyzing motives, and fearing exploitation. This increases cognitive load. With a generous person, on the contrary, you do not expect any trickery and can relax peacefully. But despite the opinions of others, many are very reluctant to recognize this trait as negative. This is largely because people experience the pain of losing something much more strongly than they experience the pleasure of acquiring an equivalent value. The more time, effort, or money you have already invested in the pursuit of something, such as wealth, the more difficult it is to give up this goal, even if it is already irrational. And the desire to avoid even the slightest loss or to miss a potential benefit, which the brain, by the way, imagines it has already received, pushes for an insatiable accumulation. Greed is a truly insidious attachment that, like a spider's web, permeates and strengthens all other mortal sins, feeding on them and, in turn, fueling them. The more a person strives to rise above others through possession, the more his pride grows. A person seized by greed strives to get everything at once, while avoiding effort. Instead of honest work, he is looking for easy, dishonest ways to enrich himself, which seem to him more profitable in his greedy calculation. When a person envies another's wealth, success, or possessions, greed and avarice are simultaneously awakened within them. The desire to possess everything possible manifests as a drive to consume as much as possible, whether it be food, information, entertainment, or material goods. Greed fuels the notion that the more the better, which lies at the heart of gluttony. The desire to possess everything, including other people, manifests as a drive to collect partners, using them for one's own pleasure or status, thereby turning human relationships into commodities. Greed breeds anger when a person feels that what is rightfully theirs is under threat, and anger toward those who, in their view, are preventing them from acquiring more. By nature, a person is inclined to form attachments to people, things, ideas, and status. These attachments can be healthy, providing a sense of security, belonging, and meaning. However, when attachment becomes excessive, it ceases to be a source of satisfaction and becomes a cause of suffering. Attachment is not the object itself, but rather a person's relationship to it. And as a method for freeing oneself from destructive attachments, let us consider the method of Aparigraha. Yama Aparigraha means non-attachment, non-accumulation, and rejection of gifts. However, this does not always equate to extreme asceticism and poverty. Ascetics living in seclusion may choose to have no personal possessions, but those living within society, creating communal goods, are inevitably surrounded by things. There is nothing inherently wrong with things, nor with one person having slightly more than another. Ultimately, how much you need for happiness is a decision only you can make. Different teachers have had varying opinions on this matter. Ramana Maharshi demonstrated that it is possible to own nothing and still be completely happy. Osho showed that one can own several Rolls-Royces without it being a hindrance. However, it's important to remember that he did not acquire them or ask for them. They were given to him without any demands in return. What matters is not the things themselves, but our attitude toward them. Instead of viewing things as sources of happiness, security, or status, Aparigraha teaches us to see them as tools that serve us temporarily, but do not define us. It is crucial to follow the principle of mindful consumption, making careful choices about what we acquire based on genuine necessity rather than fleeting desires or external pressures. We should gradually rid ourselves of excess, of items that are unused, bring no joy, or create clutter. This is not asceticism, but rather creating space for what truly matters. In the modern world, at least in its affluent parts, humanity has reached a point where purchasing a 5th smartphone or a 10th pair of sneakers provides almost zero increase in happiness. Our intellect begins to realize that excessive consumption does not solve the problem of existential emptiness. This gives rise to a demand for minimalism as a way to rekindle a taste for life, as the main scarcity has suddenly become not goods, but attention. Things steal our attention, and the refusal to make unnecessary purchases is driven not only by resource conservation, but also on the understanding that we do not want to spend a piece of our lives on a useless item. For the first time in history, we are seeing the consequences of every purchase: plastic in the ocean, child labor in factories, carbon footprint statistics. An intellect that has access to the full breadth of information thanks to the internet can no longer ignore the connection between personal consumption and the state of the planet, and mindful consumption becomes a way to avoid cognitive dissonance. This is an important contribution to caring for our own psyche, as the threat to its stability in modern conditions is becoming greater than threats such as hunger. In a world where the amount of irrelevant, useless, or low-quality information is overwhelming, it becomes increasingly difficult to extract truly important information. Endless social media feeds, news, advertising banners, and the white noise of messaging apps constantly feed our cognitive system, causing stress, rapid fatigue, decreased concentration, and feelings of anxiety. Fearing that we might miss something important, we often try to absorb as much available information as possible, which frequently consists of short, unrelated messages. In small doses, such information is perceived by the brain as a workout, improving associative thinking. The brain seems to explore different areas of its knowledge while simultaneously training the flexibility of the prefrontal cortex. But when the volume of information exceeds the capacity of working memory, the system begins to malfunction. Once a critical mass is reached, the noise turns into an aggressor that disrupts the structure of thought. The mind can no longer keep up with verifying information for logical consistency or how it relates to personal experience, and begins to simply discard context, leaving only vivid, emotional, yet meaningless fragments. As a result, the individual loses their focus, and thinking turns into a kaleidoscope of random images that cannot form a coherent pattern. Consequently, when faced with the need to work with complex systemic data, such as lengthy articles requiring deep reflection, they are filtered out at the outset as too heavy to process, which manifests as a strong reluctance to even begin studying them. When there are too many messages, the brain gets stuck on a random fragment, ignoring everything else. You might spend 20 minutes reading comments under a single post, forgetting that you have a pressing work deadline. And this isn't a lack of willpower, it's an emergency fixation, the brain's attempt to latch onto at least something stable amid the chaos of noise. The principle of Aparigraha, when dealing with information, is perhaps even more relevant than with physical possessions. The ability to say enough in a timely manner and to let go of the excess is primarily a matter of caring for your mental health. Your working memory physically cannot hold everything that comes into it from the information field throughout the day, and it is your responsibility to manage that flow of data. Moreover, it is important to find a balance between consuming short snippets and long texts. Reading only short posts leads to fragmented thinking, while reading only heavy books results in cognitive rigidity. Consciously switching formats enhances cognitive flexibility, allowing you to quickly adapt to changes and develop complex long-term strategies. However, to consciously shift these formats, you need to create a mild information hunger for your brain. A saturated mind will tell you, "I don't want to, I'm tired." A slightly hungry mind will easily absorb information and seek more. But the most crucial aspect of Aparigraha is not things or information, but people. We often cling to how we think things should be or how others should behave. Aparigraha teaches us to let go of these rigid expectations, to accept reality as it is, and to adapt. Dependence on others' approval or criticism is a strong form of attachment. Holding on to the past, grievances, regrets, past successes, or excessive worry about the future hinders our ability to focus on the present moment. We need to be able to let go of people when our paths diverge, without clinging to the past or demanding previous closeness when it is no longer possible or healthy. Yet we should love and appreciate those who are close to us, without trying to possess, control, or emotionally depend on them. The less we are attached to things, ideas, or people, the freer we are in our choices. We can make decisions based on what truly matters rather than on the fear of loss or the desire to hold on. Attachments drain our life energy, which is spent on fear, anxiety, and maintaining illusions. By freeing ourselves from attachments, we release this energy for creation, creativity, and living. Aparigraha is not an act of denial, but an act of liberation. However, to feel freedom, we must impose limits on ourselves. If the limitation comes from outside, even if it is beneficial, the ego will inevitably protest. Our brains are evolutionarily wired not to trust external forces. We do not always fully believe that external limitations are genuinely in our best interest, and subconsciously look for hidden control or benefits for the one imposing the limitation. Self-imposed limitations are necessary because otherwise we are governed by our instincts, fleeting desires, and external stimuli such as advertisements, social media, or addictions. In this case, we are slaves to our biochemical reactions. The virtually limitless choices that have emerged in our lives often paralyze us and cause anxiety. Self-limitation cuts out the excess, creating a channel for energy. As Seneca said, "For the one who does not know to which harbor they sail, no wind is favorable." Every time you consciously tell yourself no in defiance of an impulse, you strengthen your agency. This brings a sense of deep satisfaction and personal power, and you become the master of yourself.